My pleasure to introduce Dr. Roberto Gugig. Some of you know him.
I hope.
A clinical professor at Stanford Medicine Children's Health in our division of Stanford Pediatric GI. Roberto is really an international expert in advanced therapeutic endoscopy, ERCP, US. He's the director of endoscopy at Lucile Packard Children's Hospital. He focuses on minimally invasive techniques. Many of you know, I've sat with him, and it's really cool to have that privilege of this kind of expertise. And Roberto has some unique interests, which we'll hear about today, in that he's also an innovator. He wants to do things better. And with every scope and every difficult case, Roberto sees an opportunity to partner in a unique environment at Stanford and in the Bay Area. And he was accepted to another sort of signature program here, which he'll tell us about in biodesign. And the School of Biodesign at Stanford is really internationally recognized. It's a coveted position to have to be able to partner or engage with them. And Roberto is one of two from our group, including Rachel Hurries, who is or has been in this program. And so, Roberto, I convinced Roberto, I have to twist his arm a little bit. I said, Roberto, you got to tell us about the biodesign. We want more people to apply to biodesign and take advantage of the offerings. Remember, the Department of Pediatric subsidizes heavily, or actually pays for completely, the enrollment fee, which is a sizable amount, but it's worth, it's got a major return on the investment. And so Roberto's talk is generalized in its title. I think he's going to take us through his experience, and it is from clinical need to bioengineered solutions, solving medical problems through innovation. And Roberto, I know we've asked you to keep your talk to about 30 minutes. Would you prefer that we hold our questions until you finish?
Yeah, so I'm going to try to give kind of a deep dive for 35 minutes, and then I'll open it for questions, comments, anything. Yeah.
Perfect. So hold on to your questions. You can also post them on the chat, and we'll entertain them afterwards. All right, passing to you.
Awesome.
And let's welcome Dr. Roberto Gugig.
Okay. All righty. Wait, where's my share here? Oops. I can see it, but now I can't see it on my computer. Just a second. Where is it?
We need somebody from the robotics to come in.
No. Let me just see what's happening here. So, what is happening with my? Okay, is it shared now or no?
Not yet.
Okay. Let's see. Why is it not shared? Why is it not shared? Okay, sorry about this.
Oh, there's your, okay, so you share the screen now. Oh,
But I
it just
don't.
disappeared again. Then click on this. And then click share. And then share here.
Yeah, but it's sharing.
It's okay. It'd be click share and then go ahead and click your PowerPoint wherever you go. There you go.
All right, cool. Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Hussain, for the introduction, and thank you for having me here. So what I want to do today is speak a little bit about my alternate or not so secret life in biodesign. And so, how is this? How is this passing now? Okay, so these are my disclosures just to show you that I live and breathe in this space, and I collaborate with big companies and small startups and anything in between because I really feel passionate about innovation and developing new products specifically for pediatrics, which is such a neglected group, as you'll see. So what I want to do with my time is give you a little bit of background, including my own journey, how I got here. I will tell you a little bit of the biodesign process, which is what you learn in the biodesign fellowship. I want to speak about Impact One, which I'm very proud of to be a part of. And I'm very proud because it's something that was born here and is designed specifically to support innovation in maternal fetal and pediatric medical devices. I'll touch a little bit on policy and advocacy because, ideas and money are good, but if you don't have policy to advance these things, then nothing really moves or happens. And I will give you some examples of things that have come out of biodesign here at Stanford. So hopefully get you inspired. And so my journey into what I didn't know was called biodesign was really MacGyvering solutions in third world countries. And so this came in the form of anywhere from something simple from a nebulizer all the way to an autoclave, home device. And as I grew and became a gastroenterologist and advanced endoscopist, obviously my MacGyvering changed into GI solutions. And so not long ago, I don't know if any of you remember, but we did not have GJ tubes for kids that were less than 10 kilos. And so this is a poster that I presented with Robert Kramer from Colorado, in which we designed a GJ tube using an 8 French feeding tube attached to a G tube for infants. And we published this. We actually have a video on YouTube on how to make this. So that was my foray into being an influencer, Dr. Hussein. Had I followed my passion, imagine where I could be. And some of you have watched as I've used, stents that are made for the bile ducts, for the airways, into the GI tract of children, because we do not have those devices commercially available. And also, I've built what we call dynamic stents, and this is a term coined by the Italian pediatric surgeon who developed this. And these are kind of homemade, self-made stents that are built on top of an NG or a sump that are custom made for the type of stricture. Now, some of these ideas, somebody else identifies that it is a need and this should be developed. So if you look now, AMT has a micro GJ that is commercially available. We didn't have this before. So now we use this and have this, but we did not have this before. So now this is a real product, born from a need. My other kind of venture into biodesign was we started using for a long time magnetic compression to develop anastomosis and stricturoplasty. And this is specifically used in the esophagus, at least in pediatrics, where in refractory strictures and kids that are essentially condemned to have surgery, we try to prevent surgery. And we've used magnets, one from the top from the mouth, one from the bottom from the G tube, join them, and they form very nice fistulas. And this is exactly the thing that we worry about when kids ingest magnets, right? Because they create fistulas between the GI tract. And so this is what it looks like. The magnets are hollow, they're high power, they're neodymium magnets, and they form nice fistulas in between. And because of this, believe it or not, there's now a product where you have two catheters, an oral catheter and a gastric catheter that join with magnets at the end. And it's approved for pediatric. It's called Flourish. And it is by the FDA approved for pediatric esophageal atresia device. So it's something that is commercially available to use in pediatrics specifically. And when I learned about biodesign and innovation as a process was about 14 years ago when I actually did a chapter on a nutrition book in pediatrics that was sponsored by the Children's Hospital of Barcelona. And they invited us when the book was revealed to the public, if you will, to go to the hospital. And, it was a great event. They actually had, at the time, the chef from the best restaurant in the world, El Bulli, that came to the hospital and spoke about nutrition. It was the greatest thing ever. But the important thing regarding biodesign is they have on the top of this beautiful hospital that sits on a hill, overlooking the whole of Barcelona, they have an innovation hub that's called I for Kids. And this works very similarly to what a startup would be here in the Bay Area. So they have, engineers, they have sources of funding, and anybody from the hospital could bring an idea there. So while I was there, there was an idea from the kitchen staff that they brought that they were developing. There was an idea from one of the nurses about an IV pole with a platform so the kids can like ride on, climb on the pole so they can take them. And there was like very innovative ideas. There was like this mesh with that would have medication for the surgeons to put in after resection of big tumors in pediatrics. So anything in between. So there's why I really got in touch with what we call now as biodesign or innovation as a process, right? So think of it, in the last 24 hours, you've seen medical devices used for the care of your patients. And you've seen medical devices that your patients use for their own care. And it could be something simple like a blood pressure cuff monitor, a spacer for a nebulizer, something a little bit more sophisticated like a glucose monitoring device, or even a piccolo device for a PDA. Now, we use these medical devices every day, but we don't really think about how things got there. But for these devices to get there, you have to have an idea. This idea needs to be developed, and there needs to be a business plan to bring it into market. And this whole process, we don't really think about too much in academia, but this is the process that each and every one of these products has to go through. You have to go through regulatory processes. You have to go through a business plan. You have to do a lot of research. You have to go through IP and know how that system works here in the US, because the IP works differently in Europe and Asia and the US if you're expanding something to other markets. And so these devices are not always developed for pediatric patients in mind. So I'll give you a couple of examples. So for example, these laryngoscope blades, all they do is they make the blades smaller to accommodate pediatrics. They don't really account that the neonatal airway is a little more anterior than an older child, and they don't account that the tissue is a lot more friable for these metal blades. So again, this is what happens in pediatrics, right? They just make smaller things to accommodate pediatrics, but they're not really designed for pediatric patients. But this is what we have, and people use it until hopefully one of you identifies something and says, we got to make it better. Now there's devices like the Piccolo device that is specifically made for pediatric, because it's not something that really you see on older patients or older adolescents. And now this is really something that is incredible, because now they can implant this via catheterization in kids even smaller than 2 kilograms, and therefore preventing lateral thoracotomy to close a PDA that's significant for a child. And you see this all the time. So which leads me to the Biodesign Fellowship, which, as Dr. Sohail just mentioned, is really an advantage that we have here, an opportunity, because if you apply and get accepted, they pay for you to learn during this fellowship. And it's, I mean, for me, I'm passionate about this. I think it's a fantastic program. And what they teach you there is really the biodesign process and how it works. So anywhere from identifying a clinical need to inventing and developing your product, and then implementing the product and hopefully develop a viable business model. And so without going too much into detail, we start with many, many needs. And one of the things, there's a couple of important things that I'll mention that I think is important to learn early on, is that you really need to go through the process in a very structured and non-emotional way. Because we tend to get attached to something that we think about and want to develop. We tend to get attached. But really, if you look at this process, and apply it diligently, what you're trying to do is you're trying to eliminate or kill, if you will, any ideas or any products that really are not going to be viable. Why? Because, otherwise you're going to waste time and money. And it's so difficult to obtain funding for pediatric products that you really want to be as sure as you can humanly that it's going to work out. So you start by identifying many, many needs, which you then are going to screen down to the best needs. And again, This is done in a very objective way. I started with more than 30 needs when I was in the course, and very systematically weaned them down. And sometimes you feel bad because something that you're really passionate about is going to be weaned out by either your research or IP or some of the things that you're going. But this is the best way to do it because you don't get attached. The other thing that is really important for people to understand is when you're screening needs, focus only on the need. Do not start thinking about how to solve it because you kind of contaminate that. And I know that's difficult to do. It's difficult for me, but it's the right way to do things. Then it's the fun part, at least for me, which is inventing, creating. This is when you develop multiple concepts and you finally whittle them down to a final concept that you think is viable or promising to develop. And this is again, something that needs to be done in a very objective and systematic way. And then you're ready to implement. When you're trying to implement, there's a lot of things you have to take into account. And anything from IP strategy to quality to regulatory to R&D, stakeholders, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of things you need to consider before you can get a product to pitch it, if you will, to hopefully get financing to get into market. Now, the Biodesign program is way bigger than what I did, right? It has 2 fellowships, it has 10 courses, it has executive education, global programs, grant programs, translational partnerships, and even community programs. It's way bigger, and everything lives only walking distance from here. And it's being taught across the world. So there's now more than 100 programs modeled after the Biodesign. And one of the things that you see this book on the left of the screen, that's one of the things they give you in the course. They gift you this book as well. And once you're in this Biodesign world and you're across all these people and with this big networking, I've worked with people that have gone through Biodesign courses, from Singapore, from Australia, from Europe. I mean, it's incredible. You're now entangled. Your name is there, and if they call the Biodesign Center and say, "Oh, maybe speak to Dr. Hussein because he knows about pancreas," or maybe speak to Gugig because he knows about endoscopy. So you're a resource now to work with people. Now, there's been estimated about 13 million patients that have been helped by technologies invented in the Biodesign Center, but I think I will say that we're talking about devices and medical things, but I think the most important thing that the Biodesign Fellowship creates is really people, because the people are what makes the change. The people are really what comes up with the ideas and puts hard work and sweat into it to make them into reality. And so I'll just show you a brief very brief of fellowship outcomes. So this is kind of a snapshot of the primary role of people going into the Biodesign Fellowship. These are some of the leadership positions that they achieve. So, people, so I think that one of the things that I've noticed that there's many people that when you mention that your Biodesign program at Stanford, this is very, very well thought after. People hold it in very high esteem when you speak to other people, even from other parts of the world. This is kind of career role from some of the alumni, just to show you. And now I want to speak a little bit about Impact One, because I'm very proud that this was born from Stanford. I'm very proud to be a part of it. And I think this really has playing a major role in advancing maternal, fetal, and pediatric devices. And this is the problem, right? I mean, this is based on FDA medical device approval in pediatric versus adult. And look at the difference here of approval. So the industry spends more money to develop health technologies that address the last months of life than for kids that can transform a lifetime. So this is the reality of the US market, okay? And so this is what we're trying to improve. And one of the big drivers here is Impact One. So how does this come about? Well, in 2017, our own James Walls, who was a pediatric surgeon here, starts leveraging Stanford resources to address this lag in pediatric health technology. By 2018, UCSF joins. There's a grant from the FDA that creates an annual pitch competition with a $250K a year. And since 2022, this has all been formalized and put under one umbrella called Impact One. The co-directors are two people from Stanford that you can see there on the pictures and their names, and with the vision to drive innovation in pediatric maternal health and education, translation and policy. So this is really the mission of Impact One. And the challenge of developing pediatric health technologies is that we need to really develop high impact technologies for small markets that need to be scaled to be a sustainable business. So this is a challenge. It's a lot more challenging than adults. And just to show an example and some inequality, I'll show you a picture on the right of a very nice central line in an adult. You can see how clean that looks, how nicely it is, right? And now I'm going to show you an NICU baby with central lines. And this is what they have. These tapes and sutures. And this, believe me, this is what happens in every NICU if you go. And so this is prone to not only infection, but line migration. But this is what we have. This is incredible. These two pictures, I think, show very well kind of the inequity between adults and pediatrics. So what happened? Somebody identified this from by design. This is a problem. We could do better than this. So they went through the process. These are all their iterations on the right of the different type of products. This is how they did the testing for line displacement and even infection control. And this is how two medical scholars, three engineering graduate students created a company that is now a viable company with a solution. And now the revenue is approaching cash flow. There's more than 2,000 babies and counting, 73% reduction in line migrations in the first clinical study. And now this has been acquired by another company. So this is just to show you somebody identified a need and came up all the way to a product. And lightning doesn't only strike once. I'll give you some other examples. Here's a group that identified that unwanted pregnancies in teenagers that kind of forget to take their OCPs are a problem, but they are never without their phones. So they created a smart and discreet OCP management system with kind of a smart case that communicates with a phone app to remind them. They created a company that has now been acquired. And then another group, looked at the impractical of home asthma monitoring and how it was not preventing admissions to the ER and the hospital. So they developed a home sensing and digital symptom tracking to intervene early and prevent asthma admissions, which then created a company that was acquired by Apple. So the vision really of Impact One is to be a global leader in pediatric health technology innovation, improve lives everywhere, and really educate and enable pediatric entrepreneurs to do some of the examples I've just showed you. And really, for any pediatric entrepreneur that wants to work in this space, it starts with education. So I think the Biodesign Fellowship is one of those things, not the only, but one of those things. And Impact One not only provides education, but provides coaching, directed resources, seed funding. So there's a lot of support that these companies that present to us can get. A little bit about policy, nothing will be advanced if we don't change policy for pediatric. And here's a graph showing that over 500 rare disease therapies have been approved since the Orphan Drug Act was passed. So again, this is important that we work on policy as well. And we're leveraging the new Stanford Health Policy programs to advocate for maternal and child health. So we can actually move the needle forward. This is kind of the portfolio of Impact One, more than 147 companies. The indication you can see all maternal, fetal, and pediatrics. This is the development stage that each of the things are. It has a big impact. 17 countries, 6 continents, and pretty diverse, almost half female, and 38% person of color or minorities. And these are the type of resources that Impact One provides for companies. So feedback and coaching, regulatory support, connections with consultant investors or nonprofits, and funding. So there's a lot of things that Impact One can provide for companies that are starting out. And it has, good impact, almost 80,000 patients treated with the devices, $234 million raised, 346 jobs created, and 4 companies. So I'll leave you with a few other nice examples of things that are up and coming. This is a breath testing for necrotizing colitis. I have Shweta here, so I don't need to speak too much about this, but you know that this affects at least 100,000 kids that we can't optimize their nutrition, more than 3,500 kids that have short bowel, death, cognitive impairment. And so this is on the premise that we can see a rise in hydrogen and methane levels before the onset of necrotizing enterocolitis. And so if we can intervene before the problem, then you can prevent surgery and all these complications. So there is a device being trialed in the NICU to see if we can actually move the needle and prevent necrotizing enterocolitis. Things don't have to be that complicated. Or, here's a company that developed something they're calling CoolGuard, which is to treat oral mucositis that affect up to 60% of patients with pain, oral pain in chemotherapy. And so this is kind of essentially a cryotherapy mouth guard that you can see in the heat panel waves there on the right, how it cools the mucosa. And so again, it's not a complicated device, and it's solving a problem. This is a more complex device, and it's fetal shunts for bladder obstruction. So in kids that have bladder obstruction, they in utero they usually put shunts in to protect kidneys and other things. But the shunts migrate or clog or kink, and so 80% of the time they're having to change these shunts. So there's a new created shunt that has anchors so it doesn't migrate, has a center kind of coil that flexes to prevent kinking. And you can see it compared to some of the other things that they use. And so it's a company that's up and coming and probably will make it to market. So they're getting kind of the second round funding now. This is what we need to change really is the ecosystem. Early investment is a really key hurdle for pediatric device development. You can see, how difficult it is. If you look at only peds in this graph, it's like 7% of all funding. So it's really, really tough to get things funded in pediatrics. And some of the lessons that we've learned from by design process is that focus early on value. And I have a couple of quotes to show you. Involve the parents as stakeholders because sometimes the parents can really push things forward, social media, etc. The importance or not of intellectual property, people focus a lot of intellectual property. I'm not saying it's not important, but it may not be a killer for a product necessarily. How to obtain capital outside of the regular sources, I think is quite important. And so I think, focus early on value. And this is, I'm not going to name names, but this is a famous Silicon Valley venture capitalist. He says, I invest in massive markets because I like a bullseye that's so big that can afford to be a little off target until still make loads of money. And a quote by a not so famous Stanford professor, to innovate in pediatric requires laser focus on impact and value because the bullseye is so small that you can't afford to miss even by an inch. So there you go. So I think that, by design in pediatrics has momentum now. There's a lot of places doing this. And so if we bound together, I think we can actually move the needle forward. I think now's the time, and hopefully I've inspired some of you. So I'll take any questions or comments.
Okay. Well, we have a comment or a question on the chat. Let's start there, and then we'll go back and forth in the chat. And
Let's see. I'm not monitoring the chat. I don't know.
So it was from Marwa. And Marwa, if you're on, do you want to ask the question live? If you're not, I'm not sure. If Marwa, you're on. If it's not feasible, I will ask it for Marwa.
Sure.
Okay. So
Can you ask it, please?
yes, of course. And so thank you for your question. It's actually more about biodesign and logistics. Can you comment? And she says, firstly, great talk, and I think we're all so energized by this, presentation, which really walks us through what you're seeing in your coursework. Can you comment on the time commitment during this fellowship does the fellowship help you take your idea and turn it into a product? And then number three, and I'll keep us on track for all three questions, do they have resources such as engineers and financial advisors to help turn an idea into a product?
Yeah, so I think the time commitment, I'll try to start in order if I can remember, but the time commitment is usually the classes, it's about 8 months of classes. Classes usually Wednesday evenings. So, during the time I was taking it, after 5, even if I was covering something, I would ask Monique just in case somebody calls, after 5, but it's usually after 5, so it's not during the
Like an
day.
hour or 2
So
hours?
it's a couple hours. And then, yes, that, you during the by design fellowship, you bring many needs and wither them down to hopefully one, which you're going to advance forward. I think, these things take time, so it would be unrealistic for me unless you bring something that's well researched already, and decanted. It's really tough that in 8 months you're going to have a viable product already, right? But having said that, during the fellowship, they have consultants that talk to you about IP. So they have IP specialists that talk to you, and you can ask any questions. And these people charge a lot of money, and it's free. You have them available. They give you an email. You can email them, call them. You can set up different meetings. They're very generous with their time. You have regulatory people that, again, do this for big companies, and they charge a lot of money for it, and you have access to them as well. You have patent lawyers, so they bring, some of the biggest companies around Silicon Valley that have patent lawyers and work on this for huge companies into the course. They give classes, they're consultants, you can ask questions. So yes, you have all this support, but I would say it would be tough to bring something all the way to the end in 8 months. That would be, I think that would be tough, just because it takes, a lot. Even just doing the IP stuff may take several. So
I think you answered all three questions. We have more questions on the chat, but and we'll go back and forth.
Amazing talk, and also just such a refreshing reminder of why academic medicine is why we're here, right? This is very exciting. My question is, can you speak a little bit about the experience of either junior faculty or fellows going through this? Is this something that is a good adjunct to a T32, for example, for fellows, or Bridge to K, or other types of training pathways for junior faculty? And I don't know if Dr. Hurdies is on the call. Maybe she could also speak to her experience in the Biogen. But yeah, what do you think about that?
yeah, so the by design fellowship specifically is for physicians,
Okay.
for attending, but not only pediatrics. I was with a bunch of people from the adult side.
Yeah.
But there's other programs where trainees go, and there's not only medical, there's engineers that go through the by design process, people that are not in medicine. So like mechanical engineers and other people that go through by design process. So there's a variety of ways you can enter into this world. This specific by design, like the BFF, the by design fellowship, faculty fellowship, is for
It's for
faculty, right? But there's other programs that they have students, and they have people that come from all over the world to train here from Africa. They that group from Africa training, not with us, but you see them in the building. They had a group in Singapore training. So yes.
That's so cool.
Great.
I'm on the call. I was just gonna answer. Tried to.
Yeah, what's been your experience?
It's really fun. I'll tell you that. It's really cool to get to meet people from all over the hospital. It's a hodgepodge of people. I've got a chair of a division in mine, but there's also junior faculty. For trainees in particular, there is a 1-year long program called the Innovation Fellows. And so often people will take a year off of training to participate in that. And it's 1 year where they commit to it. So there's a MD PhD doing it right now, and he's taking a break before he starts as an attending to do the year-long program, and it's every day. And to answer Marwa's question about time commitment, it is every Wednesday, but I probably spend 5 to 10 hours a week working on the homework and all of the stuff that Dr. Gugig was talking about.
All right, that should not deter anyone, hopefully, but that's a lot of time spent. So, how have you? I guess maybe a follow-up question: have you found it to be useful or meaningful, Rachel?
Oh yeah, it's great. I love it. Anybody that did it would love it. You learn so many things. You learn how to not only innovate, but to think outside the box. Think about how you could treat your patients differently, problems in medicine differently. And it's not just medical devices. Like some people will do, management pathways or quality improvement. Somebody's there to get help with their research, who's an NIH funded researcher. So if you don't have like a drive to do medical devices, it doesn't mean that you can't still innovate.
That's so cool.
Yeah, there's a bunch of digital solutions that at least during my cohort that people were so not a medical device, but it's kind of a digital solution.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, we have more questions in the chat, and again, we'll go back and forth. So the next chat question is from Dr. Goyal, and she's got an idea. Can you innovate on this? It is, I'll ask the question, then Ilka, if you're on, you can also answer it. Is there a device to prevent dislodgement of DJ tubes?
Yeah, there's not really a device that I'm aware of. Some DJ tubes are made with kind of a wire on the wall that gives them more stiffness, so they don't bend back and come out. But I'm not aware of a specific device to prevent DJ dislodgement. I've used things. I've used, I've tied silk sutures to the tube, and I've clipped them into like a fold if it's something that's recurring on a patient, but not that I'm aware of specific device outcome.
Thank you. You can create one though.
Well, I think Ilka's going to be the next participant in the course. So, thank you. And here, any questions? No? Well, I have one or two.
Yes.
One question.
Yes.
Okay, you have a question.
If you had the
Okay,
idea,
ask the question.
if you had the idea and this is 8 months, is there support after the 8 months to help you out as well throughout the process?
Yeah, they actually at the end they have some people that can apply for some grants to extend beyond the 8 months your idea, and so it's competitive. So if you get it, then you get money and support to continue developing your idea. And there's other grants. I mean, after I did the Biodesign Fellowship, and one of the things I was developing, I went to the Forty Institute, and they also have grants, and so you can apply there to continue developing. I mean, you do need seed grants to, eventually keep developing or even develop a prototype and test it. I mean, you need money and expertise for that before you can know if it's going to work or not.
And it seems like a common theme among the questions were about economic drivers, such as how does a trainee, what's the mechanism that a trainee can get involved? What's the application process? And I won't put the dollar amount in because I don't remember the exact, but it's like getting a master's degree, and it's a huge benefit. But there's an economic driver from pediatrics. The other economic driver that I wanted to ask about was the value of partnerships. And can you comment on whether you've seen or you in your own experience, either in the biodesign course or from your own experience, have seen the value of partnerships with one of three entities? And this is in view of funding as well as expertise. Large established companies for a idea, like let's say an endoscopic idea, Olympus, or Intuitive for robotics idea, or Anthropic or others for AI related stuff, versus a startup, versus just collaborating with labs that are academic labs that are in that space. Any advice or any experience that you could comment on about those three entities?
Yeah, I think you depending on what it is, you could probably have either of those collaborations. I have not had the experience with a lab yet, but I had the experience with startups and with big companies. And so one of the devices that I'm working on now for one specific area or indication, we found out that we could potentially use it for big closures of big defects in the GI tract. And so we are now meeting with big companies like Olympus that are interested to see if they would be interested since they don't have that in their portfolios. So it is plausible that even during the development of something, you find that it may work for something else. And then you can maybe get partnership with other companies.
Because the reality is that many of these companies have billion-dollar portfolios. Well, $1 trillion if you count like Google or Anthropic or Apple or OpenAI, and it would seem like there's a major opportunity. But how do you navigate that? Do you have?
Yeah, I think for that, I mean, having pitched stuff for people that have a lot of money, I think they're always looking at two things, right? But the main one is return on investment and exit strategy. So if you put in some money to develop something, what is the exit strategy? They don't want to be held 15 years on something, right? They want something that's going to be, purchased by somebody else. It's going to go to market. It's going to make, so they just don't have the patience to say, we're going to wait it out for 15 years, 20 years, right? And be bogged down. They want a return on investment. This is how they work. And bear in mind that they may invest in, 100 things, and a handful are really going to be successful. So from their point of view, okay, we're betting on these 7 to 10 to save us from the 100 investments that we made that didn't work out. So yeah.
Helpful. Well, yeah, please, Eduardo.
For the Biodesign Fellowship, at least that you went through, I guess in your mind, is it better to come at it with at least many ideas in mind, some ideas in mind, one idea in mind, or is it just the learning of the process?
The learning of the process
is important than like.
Yeah, the learning of the process
because I had an idea for a better.
No,
device.
because you will be asked during the course to bring many ideas. And I think if you go in with an open mind, is actually, in my view, better than to go in, okay, this is my idea, this is the only thing I have. No, I think you need to open your mind and say, okay, I'm going to look around. I'm going to go to the OR, I'm going to go to the clinic, I'm going to look around at opportunities and needs and things that people are having difficulty with, and then have 30 ideas, right? From all over. It doesn't have to be GI. I had non-GI ideas as well. When I went in, I had all kinds of ideas. I had central line ideas. I had intubation ideas. I had all kinds of ideas. That had cardiology ideas. I had all kinds of things from like going around and speaking to people and looking at what difficulties an IR doctor has, or interventional cardiology has, or yeah.
Can you move slightly closer to the edge?
Yes.
I think the camera keeps shifting for some reason. Well, we're nearing the end, and I guess one of the other themes was, what type of idea would be appropriate for biodesign versus some of the other incubators at Stanford. It seems like it might be an accurate statement that biodesign is potentially more geared towards devices, hardware, specific tangibles, and maybe apps. I know Nima Agapur had been in biodesign, and that's where he came up with or developed the idea of TPN, various types of TPNs, but that's still a product, a tangible product. What about drugs, excipients, bioengineering ideas that relate to drug delivery? Do you see that in biodesign, or is that different?
Drug delivery, yes. A drug per se, probably less so, right? That at least in my interactions with biodesign. So yeah.
I have a couple people in my cohort that are working on, one's working on a drug and one's working on an administration of a drug.
So administration, yes, I didn't know about a drug. Yeah,
Okay.
that's less common.
And just to that question, Rachel, is it one out of like 10 people in your group? that's
There's
doing
12
the
people
drug?
in each cohort.
Okay, so one out of
But
12.
the thing that's nice is that like when they bring in the experts, so like last night my session was related to IP. They bring in these patent lawyers, and some of them are obviously experts in patents for medical devices, but they also bring in people who are experts in pharmaceutical patents and things like that. And I was just going to comment on what you asked about how do you interact with big companies. One of the things, the conversations that I had with the patent lawyer last night was, before you have any discussions with big companies, you definitely want to make sure that you already have a preliminary patent on your idea. Just so that, you don't turn around, the big company makes it for you because you didn't have any funding.
Yeah, and so just so you know how the patent law works in the US, you probably learned this, Rachel, is that in the US, it's first come, first served, right? And so whoever files first, they get a provisional patent that lasts for a year, and it's yours. Unless you then don't renew it or something, but yeah. So yes, before you start speaking to other people that may compromise what you have, that you have to protect yourself. Yeah.
Your point and have CDAs, confidentiality agreements in place. Well, this has been great. Is there any other questions that anyone wants to ask before we adjourn?
Sohail, I had one comment. This is Alka.
Please. Hi, Alka, sure.
I just wanted to thank our Department of Pediatrics, who has been very generous in funding the cost of biodesign training. I think Roberto and Rachel got fully funded by the Department of Pediatrics, and we should be very grateful for that. It's quite a bit of money that they support us with.
Yeah, thanks, Alka, for that plug. And there was a shameless plug here for Roberto to present, which is please apply for the biodesign. A lot of the work that we do, and when we're in the business of making some level of profitability, it should go to the mission. And the department takes that amount and puts it into these types of programs. So we should really take advantage of it, I think, and as gastroenterology faculty. Or faculty soon. All right, let's give a round of applause to Roberto, and thank you very much.
Thank you. I hope you were inspired.
Yeah.